first time giving a presentation here, so I'm going to talk real briefly, a bit of code and stuff about WordPress. How many people have heard of WordPress? See, that's an easy one, and that's why I'm going to talk to you about it, because, like it or not, it's everywhere, and you can't avoid it. And you are using it, or you're going to have to use it, or you're going to have to help somebody with it. I just started, I'm originally, who I am. You probably can't see that. I am Jeff Madsen, known as Code by Jeff out in the Twitterverse and everything, and my site as well as Code by Jeff. I'm a long time ago a database programmer who shifted over to doing web apps when I moved to Japan, and for several years, many years, I was a code igniter. A few small contributions to core ages ago, kind of stuff, sort of that level with code igniter for a long time, wrote a lot about that. These days I do a lot more Laravel, Symfony components, just kind of anything, hack together my own frameworks for little things, that kind of stuff. I really like that. So, what the hell am I doing with WordPress? Okay. I also, about 4 months ago, I started working with a small agency down in Australia, who I'd worked with before, doing CodeIgniter and Laravel, but their bread and butter is WordPress. That's what's needed for an awful lot of projects. And so, just roll up the sleeves and let's do it. I want to ask, how many people have actually coded in WordPress before? Plugins or that functions PHP is what I'm talking about, the themes. A little bit more than just themes, but actually doing some coding in it. Okay. Like about a third to half of you, whatever. What I found when I got into it was I really wanted to avoid going, oh, this is terrible, we don't do it this way, and going off and doing my own thing. I want to say, all right, let's try to do it the WordPress way. Let's learn the proper of doing this. Go with the flow, use their functions or whatever. And you know, it's not that bad if you stay away from the core. If you just let the core be the system and you do your plugins, you can do a lot of things. And I was really quite surprised with some of the things that you can do, and that's part of what I'm going to show you tonight. Okay? So, this is what we're making. Round box, just to show you the actual area that we're working with. It says Woot. Okay? This is not a page. This is not in the database. That was the first thing when I started working with this company that the boss said, here's what I want you to make that we can use. One of the biggest problems with WordPress, one of the really clever, interesting things I think about WordPress, because you have to remember this code goes back 10 years ago. This is before Ruby on Rails, MVC, before all that. So, and it got so popular so quickly that they got stuck with it. I think is really what it is now. But everything in WordPress is a post. And what that means is a post is a record all in one gigantic table. Okay? And you say what type of post it is, and that combination tells you whether it's a page to display or whether it's this kind of information or does that or whatever. Okay? Everything kind of goes through and gets routed somewhere. But it all sits in the same table. Now the problem that I had with that immediately was, what if I've got an existing WordPress site and I've got users who love to put in their own pages and stuff, and I'm sitting here trying to develop on my local system a new page, and I can't push my page to them because my IDs are going to screw everything up. It doesn't, this whole database system was not designed for programmers to work with, in my opinion. It was a really clever idea of how you can put a single system that everybody codes on production. Okay? But when you start trying to integrate it, try to make migrations and do the workflow tools and things that real programmers like to use, okay, it gets complicated. It gets to be a mess. And so what we decided was that these posts are fine for the end users to be working with, but when we want to make something, we want to be able to use all of our own workflows and all of our own code and our style and ways of doing things. So we're going to build our own MVC plugin to go in and make our own pages, and it will read your posts and it will do that stuff, but we're going to control the code. We're not going to go log into the admin and make our own pages and do all of the typical WordPress stuff. Okay. So here's how we did it. This would be real quick. I'm not going to show. The code I have here is an early version. We've been cleaning up and stuff like that, but it's client stuff, and I didn't feel comfortable bringing it in to show you. So you're going to see all kinds of static functions and stuff that just make it work. Okay, it's WordPress. You can't make it any worse than it was. No. I have to stop bad-mouthing it, but as I get to use it more and more, I just bad-mouth it more and more, to be honest. So, let's see, let me jump to the code, sorry.
Full learning WordPress in the industry.
So, some of the neat things that you can do, I'd actually like to do another presentation someday, kind of steal one from a friend of mine, called Not Your Mother's WordPress anymore. Showing you some of the things that the real programmers, again, are using with WordPress. For example, how many people know that you can install WordPress via Composer? First of all, how many people know what Composer is? Sorry, I better catch up to that. Composer is PHP's package manager. It's like Ruby Gems or NPM or anything like that. Okay. PHP used to use, well, it still uses Pear and Peckle, but those have had problems for a long time. And almost 2 years ago now, Composer came along, which is a really nice, powerful package manager. Okay. And I just want to do a presentation someday on that, maybe, but can't fit everything in tonight. So, in other words, a lot of the traditional ways of just download and do everything by hand and stuff like that, large teams who are using WordPress across hundreds of machines and stuff like that, they don't do that anymore. Okay, you can do everything from command line. For example, there is a project called WP-CLI, command line interface, where you can sit and download, install, manage hundreds of machines, all like a real sysadmin. Yeah?
One question. Can you also release plugins with that?
Release plugins.
The biggest problem I have with WordPress is that you can't run something on a stage server, say that everything works okay, and just press a button and release in the production.
Yes. Actually, I'm not that fascinated. I'm fascinated that you can install WordPress, but the plugins, yes. That's the next thing I'm going to bring up.
Because they are both in code base and in database at the same time. So how you migrate?
The first thing that you want to do is, okay, now go in your admin and install, activate. No. Okay. So they have, Composer has a package site called Packagist, where you can get all the information of all the different packages and install from GitHub. Okay. WordPress has a version of that called WP Packagist, or whatever you want to say, which is a mirror of the official WordPress plugins site, set up so that you can install any plugin via Composer. So you set that up in your JSON file and you just Composer install.
But my problem is that after you install a plugin, you have to also, in the database, for example, you want to say the URL is this and something like that. So does it also migrate the database, reflect the database in the production server?
No.
Yeah. So when you release, you have to go in and do some work on the database as well.
I'm not interested in plugins. That's a future problem that I want to deal with, is how we can do migrations. That's in my head, how I want that bad. Okay, or I wouldn't even have to make this. But yeah, right now, those settings and things like that, that's something separate.
Okay.
This is for files. And what I'm making here is not intended to be released as a plugin. It's what our company uses to do our work and that we share, and we don't mind sharing it, but it's not a plugin for the wild right now. Although there are MVC plugins that you can grab. Okay. I'm going to try to speed up a little bit to get in the code, because I know it's getting late. So, over here, I'm sorry, it's really tiny. In WordPress, you have the plugins directory always, as well as your themes, etc. We need to show that. And there's something called MU plugin now. MU now stands for must use, not the old multi-user. They took it and I don't know what they did. I wasn't around when that changed. Once it was multi-user, now it's must use. But what this does is that anything put into the MU plugins is automatically loaded, cannot be seen in the admin plugins area. Okay? It's a bootstrap right away. Okay? And so when we put something in that we don't want the customer to mess with, we put it in here. Okay? And it will automatically load, and more importantly, it automatically loads first, before any of the other plugins and themes and anything else. So we can get our core in there first, and say everything build off of this. Okay? And what happens, hopefully I've lined these all up correctly. So MU plugins will not look for directories, but it will look for any file and it will load it. And it does have some ordering, and I'm not really that sure. I've actually only been working with WordPress for about 4 months. I haven't had time to learn everything inside about it. So what we did is we just make a loader file, okay? And it requires, that goes into our plugin, I'll tell you in a minute, okay? And then also notice here, I'm including vendor, vendor autoload. That's our composer. Whenever you do composer, okay, it installs all of the different PHP libraries that you might want, and it puts it into a directory called vendor. Okay, with an auto load, so that all of the classes that you've brought in are auto loaded and are accessible to you right away. Most people do that out at the root when they're using a Laravel or CodeIgniter or whatever, but you can actually put your composer anywhere in the system and just run it from that point. That's your base point. So what we have done is inside what I call the Elite core, goes up a little bit, is I've just put it inside there. And that way I can package it all as my own plugin together. And you could have that multiple. So if somebody else is building a plugin and they got smart and they want to use Composer and Vendor and stuff too, they don't interfere. This is mine, just in my plugin. Okay. And a Composer file, like I said, I'm not going to get into it tonight. Okay. But a Composer file is a far file in PHP is an executable, like a jar file. That's I think where they got it from. PHP jar file is what it is. And it runs a Composer JSON file. And the JSON tells it what packages to go out to Packagist, in this case, out to the Packagist site and pull down. Pulls them into Vendor. And Vendor, then these are all PSR compliant PHP libraries. Any library that you've ever used and loved, just bring it right into WordPress and use it. Okay, you're not restricted to WordPress and plugins anymore. You can do anything in the PHP world. Okay? So that's good. So my loader file, like I said, all it did is it just requires it. Just says go get these two files that are going to now go tell you where everything else is. It's a bootstrap, essentially. Inside my application, here, close it up. Inside my Elite core, You see, that's my package. I've built out my own sort of MVC framework. It looks an awful lot like CodeIgniter. There's a reason for that. That's what I know. But it looks a lot like most PHP frameworks or even Ruby frameworks or things like that. Okay? What I have done is created a system which is going to be my really high-level base core files. Okay, that's really like my framework if I were releasing this. And I've got my application, and that is where I'm going to be different for every client. That's where I'm building my app. Okay? And then just some includes for other junk.
3 minutes.
Three, 4. Okay. And assets, etc. No, I don't even need that much doing. I'm almost. Now we get into the code, and I'm not going to show you so much code. Okay, you can imagine. All right. So I go into my system, and I start just loading up files like you would on a normal Bootstrap. Okay, if you were making your own framework, essentially. So from this point on, there's not so much clever stuff to talk about. Okay, I go in, say, load up all these files. We played around with a few different ways to make maybe an HMVC out of it. You can do anything. It's just raw PHP code. Go make your own framework. The other couple of bits here, how it actually works. Push this up. We use a plugin called WP Router. And WP Router allows us to define our own routes internally and push it right into a class. Okay? And so, really fast, but here is, this is the one that's calling that page that we had before. Okay? And it's just saying, okay, if it hits this path, go into this class, this method, okay, do whatever is inside there, use this template, so I can use any template, I can change whatever, make my own. Okay, this is just the default. Okay. Going into the HN demo, that is nothing much here. I don't have time to show you all the code. I can share it for you later if anybody wants to have a look. This template is actually one of the libraries that I pulled in called PHP Plates. So it's just a PHP library that's out there I used, and you could use your twig or anything that you wanted to. Okay, I happen to like this one. Okay. And this is my view. Okay, so inside the application, say we've got models, libraries. I use custom post types as sort of a controller because I still wanted to stay integrated with WordPress. I wanted to stay with that concept of posts, using the custom post types. We have a base library and some things like that. We didn't try to get completely away from it, okay? But still building our own thing. The last thing then to show you, this is the view, okay? And the important thing that comes out of it is, you saw it was just a div with a red border, and that's what it is. Meaning that I'm still using all my templates, and everything that's being made there is just my post content. So I don't have to worry about my designer, how he's going to make the templates and all of that. My stuff just fits right into the normal slot. If you were to go make a page and create that same page, it would look like that. It would go right in there. All I'm doing is going right into the center, into the page content where the person could type their own stuff, and I'm inserting my own, injecting my own code, leaving the template all alone. Okay. So it integrates very, very nicely, but it's code now. I sit on Git and push it right up to our server and pull it right down onto their server. Okay. And I don't have to mess with the post IDs or any conflicts or any problems or things like that. There's more, but I'm out of time. So.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I have to...